Hello, this is Teresa Spangler, founder of Plaza Bridge Group and the podcaster of FutureForward. And I'm excited today to share my guest, Robert Wolfe, who is the founder of ZEC, which we're going to talk a lot about because I'm very excited about what they're doing, but also a founder of Crowdwise and Moose Jaw, both successful companies that were sold and successful exits. And Robert, your story is so incredible. I would love you to share a little bit about your journey. Maybe you can start out by talking about the couple of things that you had exits on and how you got there. How these ideas came up and how you designed it. Did you design it for exit, for example? So maybe you talk a little bit and give us a little bit of intro on. That would be great. And then we'll get into ZEC.
Sounds good. So, and I'll try and give the background fast because I don't want to be boring, but I first started a company called Moose Jaw. We sell North Face and Arc'teryx and brands like that. And I really got into it because I was a backpacker and a climber myself. And I was helping a friend who started a guide service. And we were taking school groups on trips. And this is pre-internet. There was really no place locally I'm in the Detroit area to buy gear, or the places where you could buy gear. They didn't make it easy. So it sort of started off as a joke, and we got really lucky at Moose Jaw for two reasons. One, we had no idea what we were doing. I didn't even know the rules to break. I mean, when I tell you I was the kid who refused to go to the mall with my mom to get new clothes, that was me. I knew nothing about retail. And when people would come into at that time, our one shop, we didn't say, "Can we help you?" We said, "Hey, do you want to go play home run derby in the parking lot?" I mean, there was no hyperbole there. That's how we interacted with customers. And what we were really doing, although we didn't know it at the time, was experiential marketing. If you think about what retail tries to do today to get people engaged, we were doing that just because it was sort of a reflection of our personality. And that was just lucky. And the other reason, probably more importantly, is this is going to seem crazy, but when we started, North Face didn't make product for women. And so which is crazy, right? So when we launched, we described Moose Jaw, it was really a destination business. I mean, you were buying North Face or Patagonia really because you were using it on a backpacking trip or climbing a mountain. And now you can't walk around any college campus without seeing 10,000 kids wearing that stuff. So our timing was just very lucky. So we grew Moose Jaw. We really tried to take these learnings from our interactions with customers in our shops and apply it to the internet. And what that ended up being was sort of blogging and engagement and all these buzzwords before they were buzzwords. And again, it was not because we were super smart or forward thinking. It's just sort of what we did.
Well, I love the authenticity of that because you're just sharing a part of who you are and you found your tribe.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Once we put data around it and we understood how to do that, then we did it all very purposefully. So for us, we could not have survived if we didn't have a pretty awesome repeat rate and very loyal customers, because we couldn't pay for new customers. The cost to acquire a repeat is so significantly less than a new customer that really drove the business. And for us, it was trying to figure out ways to drive that kind of loyalty. And longer story later, we ended up being acquired by Walmart, which is still weird to say because that was not part of the plan. But it was they've actually been really awesome. I'm not involved anymore, but my sister's still there. I'm still friends with our CEO. And so it's been a really good partnership. So that's Moose Jaw. Should I stop for a sec or keep going?
I love that it was very organic, and I want to ask you a question because some of our maybe a lot of our listeners are young professionals looking to do their own startups, and sometimes the fact that I hear a lot, I don't have that experience stops them. So what do you tell a young professional interested in starting their own business that doesn't have exactly the experience in that industry or in that realm?
Well, I'll answer in a couple ways. First, we to this day, one of our core values is we talk about the idea we are never going to be the smartest,
Right.
but we can be the fastest.
Yeah.
So we really try to work quickly. We try and be great communicators. Anyone can do that.
Yeah.
Not everybody can be the smartest, but anyone can be great at communication. So that's what we try and do. And really, I know it's sort of cliche, but we try to fail fast because
Right.
we are not going to get everything right, but we want to learn from it quickly. I also think when we first started, my thought, and I would say this, is that no one knows what they're doing, including us.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have anyone helping us. And that was a bad decision.
Uh,
Once we ended up getting someone to really an advisor who became a mentor to me to help us, he taught
right.
us so much because he had been through it before. He had failed at everything. So not only would I advise someone to not believe their own bullshit, go really fast, but also if you can get someone who's been through it and you can learn from their failings, that's really good to do. And we didn't have that. And
I
if
think
I were
that's,
to do it again, I would.
yeah, I think that's great advice. Can you give a little tip on where best to find those advisors? Did you find someone that was in the industry? How did you source your advisor?
We ended up, one of our investors,
Ah,
we raised money very late,
yeah,
purposefully,
yeah,
but they brought in a partner for us to help us. And that was really game changing for us.
yeah.
I'm still friends with him to this day.
That's
So
great.
we got really lucky.
Yeah,
What I would recommend is if you are going to get someone to help you, make sure they're an operator as opposed to being purely financial,
right.
because it, operators understand the domino effect of decision making, that it's not easy, right? When you make a decision,
Right.
things are going to happen that some you can predict and some you can't. But playing that long game and figuring out, okay, we have to take this 3 or 4 months out and figure out what it's going to look like, and then back into how are we going to not just solve this one problem, but the 10 more that will trip because we've made a decision. And you have to sort of live that to understand it, I think.
I no, I totally agree. I think the operator recommendation is such a great one because I know I've been venture funded and I've advised a lot. You know, the anticipation of the types of scenarios you might run into, to be able to anticipate those and plan around them, an operator can help you with that. And it sounds like that's what you got.
Definitely. And
Yeah,
that's what we eventually got. I mean, we started Moose in 92, and I
yeah,
don't think we got any help until
yeah.
probably 20 years later.
Well, I think it's amazing, this an amazing success. So congratulations on that. And that
Thank
just
you.
took you to go do the next big thing.
Yeah, so for us, the next company we started is CrowdRise. So you can't find CrowdRise anymore. It's we were acquired by GoFundMe. So if you
Right.
type in CrowdRise, that's where you'll land. But we had gotten, again, really lucky at Moose Jaw and thought that we could do something better for the world. And as we researched the giving space, we came to the conclusion that it was just monumentally boring. Even more than that, it was guilt-ridden and burdensome.
Yeah.
And we had this playbook we had used at Moose Jaw where we tried to engage and make it fun. And backpackers take themselves really seriously. And we wanted to flip that because being outdoors should be fun. And
Yeah.
we thought, what if we could apply these same learnings to a new space and trying to make giving back fun? And if you think about 2010, 2009, the
Yeah.
idea of telling someone how you gave to charity was seen as tactless.
Right.
No, nobody did that.
Right.
And our mindset was if we could make people self-interested because they liked it, then people would donate to cause more frequently and also tell their friends about it and create this network effect.
Yeah.
And that really became CrowdRise. So um, again, tried to make it so that people wanted to give back and giving back was cool as opposed to something you did privately. And now obviously this is 12 years later, the world is, you can't scroll through any social for more than a minute without seeing someone doing something for cause, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So it went from something that was very private to something that is social, and that's been really good.
Well, and just it's it sounds natural to you that you focus on engagement. You're good at it. It's something intrinsic in you. I'm hearing, and the fact that you are someone that likes to give back or find ways for others to give back and make it more, a triple bottom line kind of, if you will, in today's language. Where does that come from? And am I accurate?
Um, I I don't know. I think it's just, it's sort of when you're really lucky. Like I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but I'm in outside Detroit, right? I mean, I could be in Ukraine, right? That's just luck.
Yeah,
And I feel
absolutely.
like
Yeah,
people who are lucky, it's their responsibility to help other people. So
yeah,
that's just been part of our mindset.
yeah,
Um, but also, we also wanted to build a brand.
yeah,
And so the idea for us was, if you saw someone wearing a Crowd Rise t-shirt, for example, they're giving back. So
right.
we wanted to do something that was game changing around the cause space and really change the way people think about it. And I'll say, when we first walked in the door to meet with one of the biggest charities in the world, they laughed at us. They said there was no chance we are ever going to do this, right? This is way too crazy. I mean, our
Yeah,
slogan was, if you don't give back, and no one will like you.
yeah,
So it was quite polarizing. But years later, I think we became a conduit to a younger customer base.
yeah.
And some of these graying organizations wanted to embrace that world, and we became that same organization's fundraising platform. So it was really hard. We never slept. But eventually I think it sort of became synonymous with the way people gave back.
Well, and how relevant, I guess, for individuals listening to this, do you feel like that's still today? There's lots of different ways that we see people giving back. I mean, do you have any strategies or, thoughts on how relevant today it is versus when you started?
Well, I think one of the differences, and if you think about GoFundMe as such an awesome company,
Yeah,
they make it so much more tangible.
right.
So I could go give to a big organization, but I don't really know where the money is going or who I'm helping. Yes, I have some concept of that, but if you go scroll through GoFundMe, you are giving directly to a person who really needs help.
Yeah,
And I feel like it creates a different feeling.
sure.
And if someone is able to feel better about the way they give back, again, they'll do it more often and tell their friends about it. So to me, GoFundMe enables that in a really unique way that I think it has changed the way people think about cause, and again, to me, in a really positive way.
Yeah.
I don't know if that quite answers your question,
No, I think
but
it does. I think it does.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's, very much, it's showing where the money's going is so important because I think there's a lot of distrust today, in the world. So if you can find ways to give back, but also share where that money's being used, I think you're only going to be, one, happier, and two, everyone else is going to be more ready to give.
Yes, and you're touching an actual person, right?
Yeah,
It's very, you could feel closer to the person you're giving to and feel better about the money that you're donating.
right. Did you have a mentor growing up that you feel like influenced where you are today?
No, I not really a mentor, I'll say. And this was, yeah, I'm a huge sports fan.
Yeah,
And when I saw someone like, yeah, I'm in Detroit, so Isaiah Thomas, or even Michael Jordan, who I
yeah,
was an adversary when I was a kid, but um, just how maniacally relentless they are.
yeah,
I wanted to be like that.
yeah.
And I think that's really important. So I didn't really have a business mentor, but I just watched Kobe Bryant. Those were the kind of people who
Sure.
really inspired me.
If you haven't seen the documentary on Shaq, you should watch that one. It's incredible.
So funny. My mom texted me about it last night and said it's awesome.
It is awesome. It just makes you like him that much more.
Yeah, I will definitely watch.
So, well, let's take it from then you sold Crowdwise to GoFundMe. Then what do you do? The two successes
So
about.
yeah, my brother and I started advising companies really in the exact same way that we had an advisor. We started working with companies
Mhm.
and trying to help them with whatever they wanted help with. And we ended up spending all our time helping with the board meeting and investor updates.
Yeah.
Now, if you backtrack a little bit, we had a real board at Moose Jaw and CrowdRise. To say we were bad at building the board deck and hosting the board meeting is an understatement. We were quite
Yeah.
literally the worst in the world and hated the process. It was
Right.
monumentally stressful and we got nothing out of it. I thought that was just us. I thought it was just something we were bad at. When I started advising these companies, we realized that this problem is universal. And we started creating templates for these individual companies we were working with. And the feedback was pretty phenomenal from both the operators and the board members. So we said, maybe we could productize this. And that was the catalyst to launching ZEC. And ZEC is, our goal is to really reimagine the entire board meeting process from building the presentation all the way to hosting the board meeting. So that's what we've been working on most recently. We're pretty new. We just launched in March, so we haven't even been around a year yet.
So can you give us a hint of the kinds of things that are different than prepping for, the next PP, the PowerPoint presentation that you create? Yeah.
So first, I think one big challenge is we spent so much time trying to make the deck look good.
Yeah.
I'm not a graphic designer. I'm terrible at it. I mean, you should see some of the old decks that we built. They're awful. Yeah. But it didn't change the fact that every company wants to look pro in front of their board. So we spent so much time deciding where do the circles and squares go in the presentation. It's a total waste. What we did is we basically took away all that time, because in the exact same way where you would post a blog on Medium, or post a campaign on GoFundMe, there are guardrails in place that make it easier to post your content. ZEC does the exact same thing. So you're no longer getting to a blank screen in a PowerPoint and wondering where to put everything.
Right.
With ZEC, it's a website. It's different. It is not a deck. So you just go in there and start posting your content, and the guardrails that are in place, of course, with your own branding, right? You're not, we don't decide your colors.
Yeah.
But we do decide if you're going to use a bullet point, how far is that indented? If you're going to upload an image, it's automatically centered. So the time saving from, if we had our leadership team, right? These are the people who we want going and doing work to make the company better, spending 50 hours building the board presentation. With ZEC, because those challenges are solved for you, your team can actually go do the work you want them doing instead of wasting time in the board presentation. So that's one part of it, just the time saving. Yeah. But also, I think the biggest surprise to us so far is the degree to which ZEC catalyzes board engagement. Wow. So
yeah. And also, aren't you archiving all of these? So you naturally have an archive as opposed to having to keep those decks somewhere else?
That's right. We create a secure repository. So for companies, I mean, I don't know if your audience can get a sense of how chaotic I am, but I am. And when we went through due diligence, even a second time, we knew we kept the minutes and votes. We just didn't know where they were. Yeah. So when we had to go and get all of that stuff into our data room, it was really stressful and took a really long time to solve that. There is no reason that companies should have to deal with that. So with ZEC, everything is automatically stored and stored forever. So you're basically creating the secure data room as you work.
when you're bringing up an incredible point for due diligence, I can't think of a better repository to have, because it is somewhat chaotic a lot of times when companies are trying to pull all the information that the buyer or acquirer or investor even needs to see. So here you have your repository of, data due diligence.
Exactly. Yes. You nailed it.
So what drives you to keep starting things, which I love, by the way?
I don't know. I'm a total masochist. I love the brand building process, and
Mhm.
I do like the chaos and stress of a startup. I will say that when we were acquired by GoFundMe and I saw the CEO of GoFundMe in action,
Yeah.
who is not there anymore, but I love him. He's amazing. He was better at running a bigger company than me.
Yeah.
So while I like this stage that we're at a lot, I don't want to um, believe that I'm the best person to do it if we're lucky enough to turn into a bigger company. There's people who have skill sets
Right.
that I don't have, like the CEO of GoFundMe. It took me 5 minutes to see him in action and understand that when a company gets bigger, there are people who know how to do it better. But I
And
love this part.
And do you still have advisors or your operational, sort of coaches that are there to help you?
Yeah, we do. I mean, this is a new kind of business for us.
Yeah.
So it's very different strategically than Moose Jaw and CrowdRise. So having learned those lessons in the past, we definitely have people who have lived it, screwed it up, fixed it, who help us. And
Yeah.
we're on the phone with them a lot.
Well, and you mentioned that you've done some things with your brother and many maybe of the businesses. How is it? Because a lot of people shy away from doing something with a family member. How do you respond to that when people say, how do you work with your brother?
Well, it's really good for us just because we don't have to be nice to each other. So
Yeah.
if if someone sends across an idea and you want to make them feel good. My brother doesn't have to worry about making me feel good, right? So if I have a bad idea, he'll just say that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, and we drop it, and it's done.
No,
So
yeah, no
and
sugarcoating.
right, neither of us are particularly sensitive, so
Yeah.
it works pretty well for us.
Is there one that has strength in one area and the other how do you look at your talents?
Well, he is has always been more the CTO, CFO side,
Okay.
and I've
Yeah.
always been more, I guess, COO,
Yeah.
CMO side,
Okay.
and we just sort of fell into that naturally, I think.
Well, and so you've kind of mentioned a little bit of where maybe you hope that goes, but what do you foresee?
Well, the dream is that we really become a new tool that companies use for corporate communication.
Hmm.
So while we're maniacally focused on the board deck right now, most companies that are using Zach are using it for multiple use cases.
Well,
So
yeah.
investor updates is a natural, but what seems to happen is a company will use it for the board deck, delete a couple sections, and then recreate it for an investor update, delete a
Yeah.
couple sections from there, and
Yeah.
recreate it for a company all hands meeting. So it's again really organically because we're not pitching that. Um, Taking on a life of its own in a really positive way.
Yeah.
And we've always tried to grow responsibly. So we don't want to lose focus. So we'll continue to focus on the board meeting. So for example, we just launched auto-generated board meeting minutes, which is a pretty cool feature.
Yeah.
Um, you don't need that for an all hands meeting,
Yeah.
right? But so we're trying to stay focused, but the companies themselves are finding new use cases for it, which is pretty cool. I mean, I'll give an example. We're building the product
Yeah.
and we have monthly all hands meetings. We weren't using our own product for our own all hands meeting until we saw another company use Zach for their all hands meeting.
That's so
So
interesting. Yeah.
that's sort of how this is rolled.
So, which I also love that you have, you sound like you've always allowed the customer to influence when you saw opportunities coming, and I'm sure there were like common elements that you would see that like, okay, well, this is interesting. Multiple people are using it. I mean, what advice do you give companies out there today in looking for these treasures in their customers?
I mean, we have sort of always done it that way. Again, it was at first by accident. So when we would do a catalog at Moose Jaw, we would email our customers and say, "Hey, we're deciding between one of these 6 covers. Which cover do you think is best?" Now, when
Ah,
we did that, we actually wanted their opinion, right? We didn't.
sure,
We
yeah,
What it turned out is that it created great engagement. At Zec, it's slightly different because we're B2B,
yeah,
but for us to think that we have the roadmap nailed without getting the feedback from our customers would be insane. So we're constantly engaging with our customers about what they want and to see next. And I will tell you, there's a feature, for example, when you send your typical board deck, you have no idea if your board members open it or not. You have
yeah,
no clue, right? So
yep,
we, based on feedback, we built a feature that when someone first opens any of your Zacs, you get an alert, right? You as the operator get an alert.
yeah,
So now you send your presentation to your board on a Sunday for a Friday meeting. Wednesday comes around and 3 of the 7 board members haven't opened it. Now you can ping them and say, "Hey, can you please read this before the board
yeah.
meeting?" So that was entirely customer driven. That was not on our roadmap before we started getting requests for it.
Well, I love it because you're even building engagement process into it for, your board of directors. If they're not engaged, then, maybe there's time for changes.
Yeah, we have a commenting tool that this is, again, when I talked previously about the biggest surprise to us is the degree to which boards have engaged.
Yeah,
There is a really easy to use commenting tool. It's different than what other platforms might provide,
right.
and it's been really well adopted. And the operator gets an alert when someone posts a comment. So pre-board meeting, there's this banter. So A, you as the operator know where your board's head is at, but B, you can be better prepared. So if a board member says, "Hey, I'd like to dig into repeats for 2023 a little bit," well, you as the operating team can come to the board meeting with some data and some information. So that becomes a more fruitful discussion, as
Yeah,
opposed to going down a million rabbit holes in the board meeting and making it entirely unproductive, which is typical.
yeah.
So that's a behavior we're trying to change.
And is this self-funded or you do have venture funding in this?
So we don't have venture funding, but we did go and raise money.
Okay,
Our previous companies, we didn't do that,
yeah,
and it made it really challenging to hire the right people
sure.
and build the right product. And if you
Yeah,
think about a board meeting, when we started off and wanted to build your typical MVP, and even went to friends and said, "Hey, can you try this out?" Their answer was, "Well, we can't put a half-baked product in front of our board. These are our most important meetings of the year."
yeah,
So
good point.
we had to go and build this out more significantly than we had anticipated from the get-go,
Yeah.
which took more time and cost more money.
Well, still, I think that's good advice, although money might be a little harder for those kind of starting out or trying to look for that second or third round today. Anything in your crystal ball for 2023 that you could tell people that are looking at the economy to focus tightly on?
Well, for us, it's been, I don't want to say I feel bad saying it's been a good thing, but the time savings that companies are getting using Stack is pretty crazy. So
Right.
the idea that they could spend 10 hours instead of 50 and also deliver a better product has been pretty great for us as everyone is tightening. But also, your board becomes more important when
That's a
things
good
go bad.
point. Yep.
So it's this has been again, I'd much rather the economy be killing it, but for a product like us, this is a good thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't want to overstate it. This is just based on
Well,
we're pretty new. We don't want to believe we have this thing nailed, but the feedback we're getting is that this is a positive time for a product like Zach.
and I think that's why we're talking. I've been through the building of many, many boards, sat in board meetings, and I think there's just so much value to have some kind of consistency, the archival, the ease of building
Mhm.
deck. Um, You get
Thank
to
you.
know what your board's looking for, and I'm sure it gets easier and easier. It never did when you're just building a traditional deck.
For sure. And I think companies now are doing board meetings more frequently
Yes.
because things aren't great. And so
Yeah.
the idea, if you're typically doing it quarterly and saving 40 hours a quarter, and now you're doing it monthly and maybe saving 30 hours a month, obviously we're adding more value.
So what about sort of a check-in? If a board member wants to just go look at the deck anytime, and they don't maybe always keep their decks at hand, is it easy for them to just go in and look, or make comments and, hey, I thought about this 2 months after that last board meeting?
Yes, you teed up a great question. So it's because it's a website, you have a
Yeah.
login, and also you don't have to create a username and password. I won't go through the authentication, but we wanted to make it obviously incredibly easy for people to get into the system.
Yeah.
But when you get into the system, yes, there is a drop down of every company that you're on the board of, or maybe that you're an investor of, that's using
Interesting.
Zec. So you can click on your drop down and get into any Zec that you have been granted permission to see at any time. And so if you think about it, for a VC or private equity, they can now create consistency across their portfolio. So if they say, hey, this is how we want your board presentations or investor updates, this is what we want them to look like. Well, we at Zec can go and build that framework for each company in their portfolio. So now they have consistency and can get similar data. So it's been there's lots of upside to companies. So you get it. I'll stop there.
No, I do. And I think, I'm not sure that I immediately got that the customer could, and probably even better would be the PE firm board member or the VC or wherever the investors are, especially if they're doing multiple investments. What a great tool for them to have some consistency in their portfolio.
Yeah, there's cap table management companies one's called Carta, another is called Pulley, and they have been phenomenally successful partnering with VC, PE, law firms, because using those systems makes life so much easier. Zec works very similarly. I actually think we have a more complicated process that can be even more simplified. So I think we add even more value. But those companies create a really nice roadmap for us to follow.
Very nice. Well, so on the horizon for 2023 for you personally and for Zec, what do you see? What's the focus?
We'll just keep being as relentless as possible and try and figure this thing out. Again, we are your typical startup. So we're just trying to put the puzzle together and do it in a way that is as efficient as possible. And again, screw it all up and fix it as quickly as we can. I think what's most important to us is the relationship that we have with our customer. I mean, it sounds like bullshit, but I would suggest that there is no company that provides in the world that could provide better service than us. And that's what we care about most. And we do it because that's sort of what we've always done. We don't want to be a platform. We want to be an engaged platform. That's how we talk about it. But it's also, we want them to renew. So we are, yes, we do it because it's great service, but we want zero churn. So we are very engaged, everything from being consultative to first time founders who are creating their first board deck because they just did an A round and now have a board, all the way to bigger companies who just want us to turn their quarterly board review, their QBR, from a deck into a Zec, and they send it to us, and we do that for them, right? So that's what we'll continue to be maniacally focused on.
Which is compelling, very compelling. I guess a couple of wrap up things. As a serial entrepreneur, you're giving us the hint into, again, the you're still the first time in this particular startup. So
Mhm, mhm.
you have to fight the bumps.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing is easy. We don't get a lot of sleep. I mean, um, I describe the only thing I'm good at is not sleeping. And I used to think it was a curse, and now I think it's great. So, our team is up early and we're up late. So we work really hard.
Well, I love the relentlessness and your focus on engagement with customers, and not even customers, it's just people. I love the fact that you bring people kind of front and center to everything that you're doing. So I
Thank you.
admire that. I think that's wonderful. Any parting words you want to leave our listeners with, and inspirations for 2023?
Oh, I would say to not listen to one thing that I say would be my best piece of advice. Um, no, I think just doing this it's not a job, it's a life. And
Yeah.
I feel like people who tiptoe into it and think that it's going to be normal, they're sort of kidding themselves. I don't know how any company is successful if the leadership team isn't living it.
Yes.
And so I feel like a lot of people get into it, and think that starting your own business is going to be fun and glamorous. I mean, for maybe a few people it is, but for the rest of us, it's really hard. And if you don't absolutely love it and love that grind,
Yeah.
it's just too challenging. So I don't know if that's quite inspiring, but I just would be careful what you wish for, I guess.
No, I think it's realism. I like that you're saying that, and in terms of seeing so many different entrepreneurs that come to the table, you can almost pinpoint immediately the ones that are just not doing it for the love and the passion and understanding it's going to be a hard road. They're looking for a quick exit, and they just doesn't happen like that. That quick success. So I appreciate that. I think it's excellent advice. Well, let me thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you.
No, thank you so much. This is super fun.
It is, and I will we'll make sure that the links are in the bio when we post everything, Robert. And I just look forward to hearing much more about your success. I think if people know me, they know me that I love new disruptive technologies and ways to do things. And this one I thought was great. So I'm looking forward to
Awesome.
hearing about your success.
Well, thank you so much. Super, super nice of you. And hopefully we'll get lucky.
You will. I think so. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you.